Hello Newcastle fans TV and welcome to England and the UK have left the EU and what impact does that have on Newcastle signing players? We'll get on that in a moment. I just want to run you through the current squad. If we were to sign them all over again, who would be affected? Okay, let's just start off with Rafa Benitez would be affected. We would not be able to get Rafa Benitez because we're leaving the EU now, and his backroom staff. And there's 22 players that will also be affected in Newcastle's current squad, so it's a big chunk. Right, so what it means is that currently we've just left the EU. Now this is not a political video, I don't care if you voted in or you voted out. What it means now is in the next 2 years, you would feel that these restrictions are going to come into place. So it's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to be saying, right, you can't sign him because he's foreign. It's not going to happen that quick because we're going to wait. The Premier League and the FA are waiting on the government's decisions on leadership and trading deals on who and what we can do in maybe the rules change. But let's look at the current squad. You've got 22 players who could be affected. I'm going to whiz through them. The players that we would not be able to sign once it comes official that we're now officially out of the EU, because it'll take up to a 2-year process that the experts are saying. So Tim Krul would not be able to sign. We would have Colaccini not be able to sign. We had Anita, De Jong, Gouffran, Perez, Haidara, Tauvin, Riviere, Curtis Good, Saka, Kevin Mbabu, Remy Cabella, Haris Vukic. So there's players that we will not be able to sign because they haven't played for the countries enough. We'll come on to that in a minute. Players who might have a question mark around them is Daryl Janmaat. We may be able to sign him, but has he qualified to play for Holland in enough games in the last 2 years? I feel he hasn't because Holland are in the top 20 in the world and he hasn't played enough games. We'll come on to that in a moment. Tim Krul is another question mark. I know I said that we wouldn't be able to sign him because in the last 2 years he hasn't played enough for Holland. Players that we would be able to sign and they will get work permits is Wijnaldum, Sissoko, Mbemba, Save, Tiote and Mitrovic. And we've got a history with Mbemba and Mitrovic last year, which we'll come on to in a moment. So going in the future, so let's just fast forward 2 years time or 18 months. How can you sign a foreign player at Newcastle? Right. I'm going to give you a few examples. If you wanted to sign an Argentinian international, for example, an Argentinian player, right? They're ranked in the top 50. They're ranked in the top 10 in FIFA's rankings. Now, the Home Office say to get a work permit, you must have played for Argentina 30% in the last 2 years. But that's just competitive games. It's not friendly, right? Sounds pretty easy with a top nation, doesn't it? But it gets harder the further you go down. So a nation ranked between 11 and 20, let's just say Holland, for example. So we've got a few Dutch players already on our side. Let's just say we wanted to sign, I don't know, Nigel de Jong, who was at the LA Galaxy. Let's just say we say him. Now, Nigel de Jong would have had to play for Holland for 45% in the last 2 years. So you see it's getting harder and harder. Now, if we drop down to 21 to 30 in FIFA's rankings, it goes up to 60%. So you've got to play 60% of games for that nation in the last 2 years. And then it gets even worse or harder. If you rank between 31 to 50 in FIFA's rankings, you must have played 3/4, 75% of your nation's competitive games in the last 2 years, or you cannot get a work permit to come into the UK. Now, if your nation drops below them rankings, what happens then is Newcastle, for example, if Newcastle wanted to sign, I don't know, say an African player in, I don't know, Senegal. Let's say we'll sign another Senegalese player. What would happen there is then Newcastle will put the case forward to the FA, and the FA deem that well enough, they'll then go to the Home Office, and Newcastle, the FA and the Home Office would have a personal hearing on that matter, why he is an asset to bring it into the UK. So that's how that works. So you with me so far? Fast forward in the 2 years, so they've got to hit the criteria. Now, we've got a history of last year where we had to get a work permit for Chancellor Mbemba. Remember that was delayed last year because the FA bosses were out on holidays. Now, he's qualified to play for the Democratic Republic of Congo enough times, but Newcastle had to put their hearing forward to the FA, to the Home Office, and we got it. Newcastle were quite confident. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. This is where people start to get confused because a lot of people thinking that leaving the EU, you leave Europe. Go back to school. Serbia is not in the European Union, same as not what we're going to be. So Mitrovic qualifies playing for Serbia enough games. However, because Serbia are not part of the EU now, well, we were back then, we still had to qualify get him qualified for a work permit. Now, he's qualified enough times to play for Serbia in the last 2 years. So we've got Mitrovic over the line quite comfortably. But now Newcastle are going to have to look at recruitment and think, right, do we now start promoting youth players? Yes, please. We'd like to see some more young lads come through. That's a positive. So the Premier League in general as well. I think a lot of people are saying it's going to affect the Premier League, bringing in the best stars. Not really, because the best stars are predominantly in the top 50 rankings. You might get the odd one or two who are world class and play for a smaller nation, but that's very rare. They'll get ticked over the line with a personal hearing, because they will. However, looking at it now, the Premier League, the flip side on that is that now that might start promoting the youth coming through. Same as Newcastle, start developing younger players and starting seeing them coming through. I mean, you look at Wijnaldum, Sissoko, they would easily qualify if we were to sign them back again, you know. And Mbemba's another one, and then Save, Tiote, Mitrovic, those players are just reeled off. Newcastle would be easier to sign in the future. So now the scouting has to come a little bit tighter and a little bit more. So hopefully that gives you a little insight of what the rules mean now in Newcastle. If you don't understand it, just drop a comment box, lay it down below, and I'll see you later.